right. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Nakata Alm. I am the founder, executive director of Destiny City Film Festival. And this year looks a little different, but we still get to bring a lot of good conversation about some great films to you. So we're here with filmmakers from the documentary called The River, which is part of our program this year. We're super excited. We have Heather and Rick. If you want to just introduce yourselves and your role with the film, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. My name's Heather Pilder Olson. I am the producer for The River, and very pleased to have our movie in a wonderful local festival.
Heck yeah. I'm Rick Walters. Hello, Emily. It's good to see you again. Thanks for having us. I was a guest director for the River documentary film.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedules to join me virtually to talk about the film. And we can just, provide some more background and information for our viewers, which I think is one of the best parts about film festivals, in my opinion, is getting that interaction with filmmakers. Unfortunately, it doesn't look the same, like I mentioned, but we're excited to be able to join each other here and talk about it. So I'll let you two decide, who's going to answer or, how you're going to pivot off each other. But, this documentary is about a community in Aberdeen. And I want to kind of hear, how you got connected to that community and why you wanted to tell the story in documentary form.
Okay, I'll start because the origins of the film, it's an interesting story. It all started with my mom, Judy Isaacson, who is our executive producer, and she lives in Aberdeen. And she called me about 6 months before we decided to make the film and said, there's a really interesting community here. There's about 150 people that are living homeless by the river, which is a huge per capita number of homeless people for a very small town of 16,000 people. And she said, what makes this really interesting is that the homeless community and some of the community organizations are suing the city of Aberdeen because they feel they're being discriminatory toward the homeless. And this, this was written up in the Seattle Times. There was all this news and kind of commotion happening around the story. And she said, I think it would make a really interesting documentary. And I said, well, yeah, that's a great idea, Mom. Documentaries cost money. And what are you proposing? And she said, well, what if I helped fund the first part of the production? She was very adamant about this. And I said, well, are you talking about a short 10-minute film? Or are you talking about a full length feature documentary? And she said, oh, it needs to be a full length film. There's a lot going on. And I said, okay, if we can start with, a very small, very bare bones budget, I know who I want to direct it, and we'll raise the rest and see what we can do. And I immediately reached out to Rick, and the rest is history, but he will share, I think, why it was so personally compelling for him to be the director of the project. So
I still got the same feeling in my gut when you talked about Judy, your mom, saying that. Like, that's like the dream to hear from someone. Yeah. I want you to make a film, or like a full length film. Like, I still got excited when I heard it that time.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, Emily, the concept of this film tied in with me in like so many different directions. Heather and I had collaborated in many different occasions, and I think she had occasion on one point, maybe it was a Coffee Tuesday or something through the film school. I got up and was talking on a panel, and I expressed some of my stories with someone, and I think it came out that I had been homeless at one point.
Mm-hmm.
I think I don't know if that was where it started with Heather and I, but the conversation came out, and I started getting very kind of emotional about it almost, because first of all, I had a friend in Aberdeen who I was very close with, who I was in the military with. He's a decorated combat hero, very close friend of mine, father of a bunch of beautiful daughters and a young son. His name is Jason Capps. and he was Officer of the Year in Aberdeen in 2015. But he's in Aberdeen, and we talk on the phone. He calls me from work sometimes and tells me about his day, and so that instantly connected me to the project even more. And so I was in quickly, and then shortly after that, it just started unfolding. The story started with a conflict, and then led to another conflict, and more conflict, and more conflict after that. So as a filmmaker, it was kind of a beautiful trail of information. It kind of all happened very quickly and unfolded for us in a way that was just, I don't know, it's poetic. It's kind of a long tone poem more than a documentary film.
That's a good way of putting it. And hearing you talk about how kind of one thing led to another, and maybe you didn't know that it was going to go there. I was curious, like, going into the project, you had this goal in mind. I'm sure, were there surprises along the way, and did it lead you in other directions, or does anything stand out like that?
Well, Heather, you have a stronger political bone than I do, and I said at the beginning I was hesitant because I was like, I don't want to make a political film. Like, Heather is very vocal about her her social ideas, and I'm more of a proponent of order and blah blah blah, because that's kind of all I know. Dumb dog, just follow the rule of law kind of thing. Anyways, I was interested to find out how communication was breaking down, because I've learned in every situation the first thing that goes away is communication. And so we instead of making a political film, want to make a film about what's happening there and how people are communicating about it, and what should happen there and why it's not. And so it then became almost a verite, although I was in it, became like a verite documentary about like all of these different sides from the city. So it was a logistical, Heather did a fantastic job, first of all, coordinating this. Andy Tribolini, who's not here, another producer in our film, to get it all compact into about 2 weeks, a month of principal photography, but about 2 weeks of really grindy kind of cover all the bases. We saw the city, we saw the church, we saw citizens, business owners. We spent an extensive time down at the river on both banks, the north and the south bank. And we even got to meet the original drummer from Nirvana, Aaron Burkhart. And in the film, I auditioned for his band. So I just watched it again. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, there is that piece of music, and that's one of the things people always ask us, and we did try to do this, is there's so many Nirvana songs that would fit this film so well, and we actually did reach out to some of the current members of who were in the band and now are in other bands, to see if we could get permission to use that music, and of course they said no, but we did give that a try.
Something in the way, particularly. So when
Exactly.
we interviewed Aaron Burkhart, we were underneath the bridge.
Yeah.
That Kurt, and Chris Novoselic were underneath when he penned the word underneath the bridge. The tarp has sprung a leak because there was this haphazard tarp up there that was leaking water. So Aaron Burkhart relayed that, and I got like chills, and the hackles stood up, because I've been listening to that song since I was a teenager.
Yeah.
That would have been a very good song for this movie.
Yeah. I think, who knows, miracles still might happen someday, but I think our main goal with the movie, and I this is what I feel most proud of, I think, when we look at the film, the final film, is that we wanted to give people who are living at the river a chance to tell their own stories. That was, for me personally, and I know for my mom, the most important thing that we needed to accomplish, but also, like Rick said, to examine this from every possible angle. What do the police think about this? What is their job like day to day? What does the mayor have to say? What happens at the city council? What are the community organizations that are doing direct service work for people at the river, and what's their thought? And these agencies, some of them were in direct conflict with each other. There was an active lawsuit happening while we were making the movie. So there was a lot of contention, but ultimately what I was so pleased with is that everybody opened their doors to us. it took a little finagling, and like, some of these connections were so incredibly helpful, like Rick being friends with Jason, and that was the door into the police, because initially they didn't really want to talk to us. The mayor didn't want to talk to us. And
He didn't. Yeah, that's
yeah.
right.
So
We actually ended up getting to him through the mayor of Olympia.
right.
The mayor of
That's
Olympia,
right.
Cheryl Selby,
Yeah.
re-elect, mayor re-elect. She was instrumental in making all that happen, including kind of stewardship of a new program for how to handle homeless encampments. And she actually invited an entire, like, what would you call it, an entourage from Aberdeen, including the mayor, to see how their tiny home village and their transitional camp model was working. And that's exactly what Aberdeen did after they swept the camp.
Right.
It's funny. We heard from so many people, Heather, didn't we? I was thinking of the transgender woman we spoke to in Olympia as we were walking around with Officer King. Sergeant King is an amazing woman, and if you've seen the woman or seen the film already, you'll hear her say something that I think, and I loved it more than any of the politics at all whatsoever. This transgender woman at the camp actually echoed it right after she said it. But I was like, if you have to move people, literally move them from the sidewalk or from the in front of this business so they can open their doors in the morning, what leverage do you have? You can't you could write them a ticket, but I mean, that's not going to do anything. You can't take them to jail. How do you influence them? And she said the same thing that everybody said, from the police officers in Aberdeen to the clergy at the church, who are a big part of our film, is the relationship. And it's amazing. The communication failed because the relationship is distant, not connected. So the beauty in the film is we get to see some of those connections made throughout the film, and the communication open up. Then we see people like Sergeant King, and then the people in Olympia, and how they're addressing the problem. So there's this vacuum as the news comes out and tells you about all these ugly homeless encampments, and people get all up at arms. But in truth, behind the scenes, there's a lot going on to fix it. And it's a beautiful kind of symphony of effort between a lot of different agencies. I told you I ran it.
No, it's great. It's great. Something that really stuck out to me when I watched the film was, I kind of touched on it a bit though, was the city council meetings. Because folks who go to city council or want to speak at city council are passionate one way or another about an issue, right? And so having those voices come together in the same room, and all they want is something to be done, right?
Right.
Or like some action, some answer.
Right.
So I thought that was really fascinating to get that viewpoint. But then everything in between, like you mentioned, you have all these different stories that are woven together with different perspectives and different levels of engagement and experience. So I thought that was great. And yeah, the connection to Olympia, I was curious because that when that came in, I was curious how that was all connected. So that's interesting.
Well, we found out that even before we started shooting, we knew there was going to be this meeting between the mayor and the city officials of Olympia and the mayor and the city officials from Aberdeen happening on June 1st. And that was like this date that was kind of looming out there. We filmed everything else before that. And then that was one of the last major things that we filmed. But the mayor of Olympia was kind enough to invite us into that meeting, and we could film that entire conversation. So, a big piece of the film is kind of comparing these two cities. And we even thought about whether we should make that sort of the primary theme or thread of the film. It's a tale of two cities. Olympia is doing all these things, and they are a city that has more resources and more capability to do it in some respects, but they are seeing some positive results. And Aberdeen was kind of, light years behind in some ways, but also, a much less, a much more impoverished community in every way, and also with much higher rates of unemployment and drug addiction and all these other things that complicate the problem. So, and just, it's hard to avoid the politics altogether, in my opinion. But it was interesting to see, here is a woman, progressive, Democratic mayor, and here's a very conservative young
mayor. He
young
was
mayor in Aberdeen.
26 when he was elected.
Yeah, like youngest in the country. And so,
Wow.
different experience, different approaches, but it was really inspiring to me to see what Olympia was doing, to see them, extend their generosity for this meeting, and then to see Aberdeen take action after that. And they did. Aberdeen did set up a city-run tent site after that. And hopefully, there are some other things that they could draw from that that they'll be able to do in the future. Because like one of the things I said to the mayor of Olympia is, have you spoken to the mayor of Seattle? Why aren't all the mayors of all the cities around the state or around the country not sitting down and talking about this? And she said she had reached out to Jenny Durkin, and Jenny Durkin had
no response. Yeah, that was funny. So, she even quipped after, it's like, they spent $90 million and blah, 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 blah. Give me $90 million and see what I can do. Or
yeah, because as you know, if anyone needs to work on this, it's Seattle. And that's what we were interested in making this film, knowing that we've got this issue here 100 times worse and more complicated. So it was interesting to see kind of, this is how one small community is handling this. What lessons can we learn? And then maybe scale these programs up for a city like Seattle or Tacoma.
Well, yeah, Seattle. Yeah, I agree. We should all be talking and collaborating and coming together to find the best solution.
And that's our hope with, that's why we're so grateful every time the film gets to screen in a festival, and when we can actually be in theaters again. We'd love to do panel discussions and use this as an educational tool. And there's all kinds of things that we can do going forward. So, but any opportunity to get people talking about it, thinking about it, and then ideally doing something is great.
So have you gone back to the community since you finished filming? Do you have, still connected with anybody?
Yeah. We do. We have a couple sad stories to share and a couple great stories to share. And my mom lives there, so I'm back there. I was just back there a couple weeks ago. One thing that just happened in December, Ken Pickernell, who goes by the nickname of Chief Chubbs, who's in the very beginning and the very end of the film. It's a Native American man who sings that song that he wrote, the Hey Ya Hey Ya song. He unfortunately passed away just recently. And, it's always hard to hear those stories. I think he was in a much better place after the film was made, and we learned that he had received prosthetic legs and he had housing and he was doing better. And I think he had ongoing health problems that led to his death recently. On the positive side, we also learned that Adelaide, who's the young woman who's very compelling in the film, had moved in with relatives in the area. And so she was in a better place and had a place to live. Sean and Kimberly, the mother and son that you see in the film, reached out to us personally and said that they had found an apartment and they were doing well. And, I think there are people in the film that have the resources and the help, and so much of it is the internal ability to perhaps go on and do better, and some people may not, and that's the thing. I find myself thinking about everybody that we met and everybody in the movie probably every day or close to every day, and just hoping that people are doing better. But like you see, everybody's story is different, and everybody's there for different reasons. And some people will be able to get out of that situation and some people may not. But as a community, I hope that more and more of us will feel inspired or compelled to help in whatever way that we can. So
I think one of the biggest sources of pride is all those people that we did get to see. There's some characters in here from all walks of life, from mayors to folks living down at the river, and you actually got to experience them and kind of see what their personality was and hear them. And man, I'll tell you, the people that I related to were not the ones I expected to relate to. There's a gentleman named Dino who's probably 54, going on 70, and man, my heart just I just watched it again to get ready for this, as a matter of fact. But I there's a scene in the film where he's like, hey, let me get your phone. This is off camera. He's telling me this, and I'm like, what? Yeah, whatever. Come on, man. What are you gonna do? And he goes, I'm gonna call my dad. Let me get your phone. And so he takes my phone and he calls his dad right there in front of me. I found out after it's the first time he talked to his dad in 15 years. And so I was sitting there listening to him talk to his dad, seeing his face, and he was all calm, kind of jovial. But underneath that, you get to feel what that is. And that just kind of like gets inside you. When I said tone poem, I asked our sound designer, his name's Jesse, and Jesse Peterson, he's in New York. He works at Second Child, which is a top secret ad agency. I love saying that, but he did the sound design on this. And when he asked me what I wanted, I said, I don't want it to sound anything like music. We have one song we're putting in it, and I don't want it to sound like strings or anything. So we took all these different disparate sounds and slowed them down. And then he and our editor, David, who's also basically the writer, David Phillips, who's not here. He hates having people hear his name because he's very private. But the heart and the soul of this film comes from him. But anyway, Jesse did some cool things with droning ambient noises to punctuate kind of the out there feeling you get when you're homeless. There's no safety net. There's no falling back on. There's nobody at home waiting for you because there's no home to go to. And so you see these different people and how they're interacting and evolving and relating to one another about this. And it's so much higher and bigger and more relatable than the news or what other people talk about politically, because it's people. So relating to people, communicating with people is what we got to do. And it works. When you talk to people, they tell you stuff. That's what we found out, isn't it, Heather?
Mm-hmm.
People wanted to talk to us,
Well, and that's why my inspiration for wanting Rick to direct I thought very seriously about all the people I could ask, a lot of filmmakers that I've worked with here and elsewhere who would have done a great job, but it would have been a completely different movie. And Rick was the only person that I knew, still the only person I know that has lived that experience. And it to my pleasant confirmation and my wishes came true in that respect, and because he could go up to people and immediately say, my name's Rick, this is my story, and their guard comes down, and they shared all kinds of things that I know they wouldn't have shared with me or anybody else I know that I could have asked to direct the movie. And so I think that made a phenomenal difference. And it just comes down to, like Sarah, the Reverend Sarah in the film says, what sums it up best for me is when she says, people are people. And until we can start relating to each other on that kind of level, nothing's going to change. It's up to us. And, Rick and I have talked about this. I think personally what scares people or makes people the most so uncomfortable with the issue of homelessness is that we actually know that we're so close to it. We see people that are homeless and we see ourselves, and we don't want to admit that. And so we'll do all kinds of things to separate ourselves and make it someone else's problem and look the other way and all these things. But ultimately, these are our neighbors. These are our community members. These are people that we can, whatever small thing we might do, and that can be as small as looking somebody in the eye and saying hello instead of turning away. And you know, it's the one thing that my mom told us all through our childhood and growing up is she said this thing to us over and over again that stuck with me and was part of my motivation for wanting to make the film. And she said, there are people, you're going to meet people that are in different circumstances than you. They are not worse than you. You're not better than them. You're not better than anyone else, but you're just as good as everyone else. And when someone speaks to you, it doesn't matter what their circumstances are, you need to look them in the eye and treat them with respect. And, you know, just doing that can make a difference in someone's day.
The golden rule.
Exactly. And it's very, very, very simple. And if we start there, everything else can grow from there. And I wanted to give a special shout out because this is a Tacoma festival and we have, you know, a lot of Tacoma connections in the film, but specifically to Patty Ramos and Homeless Humans of Tacoma. And Patty was kind enough at the very end of our production to go and take a lot of still photos and some video where they sweep the camp. She was the one that was there to document a lot of that. And she really does phenomenal work in Tacoma. And so I just wanted to give her special shout out. And she's been a big champion of our film. So
I was a member of a church or something, I'd recommend her for sainthood because she does the closest thing I could. She calls herself a street doula.
mm-hmm.
So for those who are listening, if you don't know who Patty Ramos is, or if you don't know what Homeless Humans of Tacoma is, she's a photographer. She spent her life as a doula, basically,
Mm-hmm.
not a midwife, but a doula, right? They're different.
Yeah.
And you know, growing up, I thought doulas were like hippie, like bedwives or something. I didn't understand what it was, but it's far greater than that. And she's basically a guide for people. And some people guide people through childbirth. Some people guide people through transitioning through death and hospice. And she is a street doula. She guides people through their experience in living every day and then on the street and then hopefully getting into housing. And she's there to take pictures of them and tell their stories. And just that's it. You know, she takes really good, gritty human photos. And you look at a photo and you know that person when you're done looking at it. And I saw that early on. When we met, we were making something else called Phoenix Run in Tacoma, TJ and I. And she was using one of the shelters to stage people in. She was like literally ushering people into the shelter because she heard that it wasn't being used. And she was connecting the dots to get people beds to sleep in. And that's what she was doing like years before this. But anyways, I had just one other comment to me about some of the other people we saw. You know, one of the things that kicked the whole thing off was Como News. I don't know if you saw it, Emily, the Seattle is dying bit.
I don't think so. I think I missed that.
Okay. Well, Randy Johnson is a fantastic journalist, I think. And he did this piece called Seattle is Dying. And it had a lot of divisive kind of political leaning stuff that was ambiguous. He didn't know. He was like insidious. He didn't know it was political, but it just made everybody who was homeless or associated with the homeless seem like a sore or an eyesore. And it started a big conversation. In fact, Mayor Selby of Olympia didn't care for that either because it reflected such a poor light on humans. And so there was this talk going on outside of everything else. But when you start talking to people on a one-on-one level, including Luke, and please watch the film, anyone who's listening, just to hear this gentleman, Luke, speak. He works at the mission in Aberdeen, and he's a cook. He's been at that mission for 7 years, and he lives there. And when he got there, he was a troublemaker, and he basically burned all of his bridges. And he said he went there, and people helped him in spite of himself. Because that's what happens to folks when they become homeless. They burn all their bridges. They don't have a mom or dad to call, or a sister or brother, or a girlfriend, or anyone else, and they're literally by themselves. And that feeling is it's inexplicable to somebody who hasn't experienced it. But when you listen to Luke talk, you will feel it. So please listen to what he says and understand how real it is. It's not a political thing. It's not an eyesore on the side of the road. These are humans. Humans. Think about a day in your life, then watch these folks.
That's great, and that kind of sounds like maybe what you want folks to take away from watching the film. I always like asking, filmmakers, what do you want the audience to take away? So, did we already cover that?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, like without politics involved, if anything, it's just people talk about it. Like, listen, first of all, remove fear from the conversation. There's no fear involved here. There's no politics involved. These are people, so oftentimes if you engage, what you'll find that is your heart compels you. But what people do is they don't listen. They don't have time for it. I've got everything else to worry about. You're dirty. I'm wearing this mask. There's no one going to talk to you, kind of thing. If I were to be able to do a follow-on, what I'd like to do is find the mechanics of how people descend into homelessness. I'd start with me. You know what I mean? I don't know what you know about me, Emily, but I'm a spicy character, and I have several different things that make me unstable from time to time. I'm living an artist lifestyle to start with, but there are many other things. Interpersonal relationships, things that comprise your safety net. And when that safety net evaporates, being homeless is something. It's not like you're out in the wild and you can make a shelter. You are literally dependent on your environment. So I would love to go see what makes that happen. I'm in Los Angeles now, by the way, so it looks a lot different here than it does in Aberdeen. Let me tell you, Aberdeen was nothing compared to what I see here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't know you moved to LA. Look at you.
I've been in New York and New Jersey for about 3 years, and I just came here. My show got shut down. I was working as a location scout on television, and in March 13th, shut down, and on March 15th, I was on an airplane on the way back here.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope you'll come back to Tacoma, Seattle, Aberdeen, visit us, and stay connected.
Oh yes, we have 2 films working there still. Phoenix Run. We have a feature film coming.
Oh, great.
We're going to film that in Tacoma. Yeah, we have another one called Green Fiction, which we filmed partially in Aberdeen years before, but they donated their SWAT team, their big MRAP vehicle, and their SWAT team, and some cops and detectives, their K9 unit. It was pretty impressive. And then we put zombies in one of their buildings.
How nice of you. Yeah. Well, that makes, that shows we have something to look forward to from what you're making, what you're creating. And your plan for this documentary, The River, you're going to still try and submit in festivals, or what's your plan?
Yeah, we have probably 8 or 10 more festivals that we're still waiting to hear from. And we hope that it'll screen in some other parts of the country. I hope down the road, maybe by summer or fall, if we're lucky, we'll be able to actually go to some of these festivals in person.
I hope so.
And, talk to a live audience, which is what we always had hoped. And then I'd love to, take it out into some communities. We did just a special screening for cast and crew last year when the film was done. But I'd love to go back to Aberdeen. There's a huge theater actually in Hoquiam that holds 900 people and just sell tickets and do a fundraiser for the community and give the money that we might earn to people that are doing direct service work like Patty in the community. I think there's lots of opportunities and things we can do, and just hoping that we can inspire some conversations, some education, and some action.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any suggestions for folks that do want to take action?
Yeah. Well, Homeless Humans of Tacoma is a wonderful organization. They're very grassroots. I mean, they're pretty much a one-woman show with Patty leading the charge with a few other volunteers. They have a Facebook page and they run everything through Facebook. And you can make direct donations of supplies, things like clothes and coats and socks, or they have an online account for ongoing needs. And that's one local resource for Tacoma. Here in Seattle, Facing Homelessness is doing really good work, and I make small donations to them every month. They're out in the community, again, doing direct service work for people that are homeless. And there's organizations like that in pretty much every community. And like I said, if you don't have resources or you don't have actual tangible goods, if you can donate to local food banks, there's always a need. The need is greater now, especially with the pandemic. If you can volunteer, here in Seattle, Mary's Place has ongoing volunteer opportunities throughout the year. And there's just lots of ways that you can help. So
I have so many more things to say, but I will say this. Start a conversation with someone that you wouldn't normally. When we made this film, it was before the lockdown, before the pandemic, and I know personally because I've gone through the state and the county here in California to get housing assistance throughout this lockdown. And I know that especially in Los Angeles County, they want to keep people off the street. So they're buying out hotels, they're extending as much effort as they can to keep people from, panhandling or from staying on the streets. So the conditions have changed exceptionally since we actually filmed this. But one thing I learned is people just love to talk. See Samuel, he's in our trailer. You see his face, he's all like tatted up. That dude scared the shit out of me when he came up behind me in the alley. Trust me, I didn't want to talk to the dude, but talk to people, because what they say, like that dude, like made me. I still cry when I watch it, to tell you the truth. It's very, very emotional, and it's very, very worthwhile. And if you can't give food, if you can't give money, don't go out and give panhandlers money. Give them your time. I swear to you. I mean, it's so much when somebody looks you in the eyes and smiles at you. You forget about that loss of human connection when you don't know it. But just connect with somebody. Give somebody a hug. Give somebody a left hug for 20 seconds.
Yeah, this is so important now, especially more than ever. I agree. The human connection with everything, that we've been through is different, and it's been challenging for a lot of people. And I think this story is so important. I'm so grateful that you shared it with us. Thank you for making it, and thank you for putting your heart into it. And we're excited for our audience to check it out and to see what they can do, to make a difference.
No, thank you, and thanks to the Destiny City Film Festival. This is the second time I've got to participate, and just so you know, Heather and I worked together for the first time. The last time I was at Destiny City Film Festival for Blue Bunny, and we did a staged reading for that, and
our first year.
Our very first year. So it's an honor for us to be in the 253. I'm very much, although I'm in Los Angeles, very connected to the 253. I started the 253 Film Collective in 2013. And I have stuffed TJ there, and we're still planning to shoot a feature-length film there. And I'm just gonna put this out in the universe. Let's band together and get the Tacoma Dome and turn it into a soundstage.
Okay. Not being used right now, so.
Yeah. I know. It's privately owned. We can do it. It's a huge backlot right outside of it too. It's beautiful.
Okay, we'll dream big.
Just saying.
Well, and I'm sure we'll see more from you in the future. You've got some good projects, I'm sure, both of you. And so this won't be the last of us working together, I'm sure. And I really want to thank you for your time to chat about the film. I know we could talk a lot longer. I know, I agree with that too. But people will watch the film, listen to this, and I'm sure they'll be impacted. And that's what this is all about. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Best of luck, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye, Emily.